Okay, hello everyone. You are live with Hi Counselor. My name is Kinsley. I am so happy to be here with you. We have some great information lined up for you today with our guest presenter. But before we dive into that, I'm going to give everyone just a minute to get logged in and join us. And so while we wait, if you don't mind, just drop it in the comments where you're joining us from. I think it's always so fun just to see the different areas that are being represented, the different time zones and locations. So I'm actually joining you all from South Georgia near the Savannah area. So I'm just going to drop that in the comment section. So feel free to share where it is that you are joining us from. I'm also going to share just a little bit of information with you about Hi Counselor. And so I am so lucky to get to represent Hi Counselor and talk to you all a little bit about what our program does in particular. And so we're a career accelerator. We help job seekers land their dream job through a 4-week training period that covers important topics regarding primarily interviews, right? So those HR, behavioral, and technical interview sessions that oftentimes seem to trip us up once we land that interview. And so we're also going to help you optimize your resume, optimize that LinkedIn profile, make sure that they look perfect. And really just get you ready to go confident and comfortable with those interviews. We have one-on-one mock sessions. We've got some one-on-ones with instructors, some group sessions with instructors, all prior to starting that networking process and that automatic job application process. So we've automated both processes, both email networking and job applications. We're also able to provide direct referrals to the various companies that are within our network. And so all of these are just great tools to help those job seekers out there who may be struggling on their own. And then one of the most unique services that we offer is that real world projects that's available through LinkedIn Live, as well as in our learning management system for candidates that join Hi Counselor. And so I definitely just encourage you to check out the live projects that are run through LinkedIn, both if you're interested in data science and software. So definitely make sure that you head over to our LinkedIn page if you're not already there and check those things out. In just a little bit, I'm going to drop the link to register for our next upcoming real world project, so you'll have the opportunity to do that. We support candidates not only in software, in the software field and the data field, but also in sales roles as well. And I know that this was just a really quick overview. We do have info sessions that we host on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So we've got one tonight. Is today Thursday? The days kind of run together. So yes, we do have one this evening. So yeah, just would encourage you to check out the info session. Towards the end of this webinar, I'm going to drop the link to register for the info session as well. So you'll have all that good information. Our next cohort begins July 10th. So if you are interested, go ahead and get in that info session to learn so much more and get those applications in. But we are going to go ahead and transition to the reason why all of you are here. I know you're not here to see me. So we're so excited to be able to focus today on really just providing some good advice for data science job seekers. And for that, we've got Daryl Sarant. And so Daryl is a data scientist at Gravity AI, where he specializes in providing customized data science solutions for their clients. He's also worked as a software engineer at Lockheed Martin, where he developed, and this is so cool, guys, aircraft fire control system software that has been utilized by warfighters in over 20 countries. He's also served as a data analytics engineer at Tesla, where he developed data processing techniques to evaluate performance and detect failures in, and I don't even, Daryl, can you tell me how to say this? Say it for me.
Photo. I just say PV, like
PD,
PV
okay,
systems. Yeah,
gotcha.
photovoltaic.
So
Yeah, yeah,
they know what I
PV.
mean, right?
Yeah,
They know what I
solar.
mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. And storage products. Daryl graduated from the Florida Institute of Technology with a degree in computer science. Just so much valuable information is about to be shared with you. So get ready. I'm excited. Daryl, thank you so much for being here.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Today, my presentation today will just be centered around pieces of advice for anyone who's seeking jobs in data science, and I kind of wizardly call these tips bite solid tips. And let me tell you a little bit about what bite solid means. At least for me, it's actually a term that I actually coined for myself, just to kind of describe my own journey as a professional and what I always try to bring as a professional in everything that I do. So you think about the two terms bite. So bite obviously means like software development technology. The bytes like this the universe storage for any computer system, and then solid is just like really about being a solid person. You know, you know, calm, confident. Really someone who's really um, person consistent. Does excellent work, and really all about just bringing the best self in everything that they do. So these tips that I'm about to share with you, I hope it'll give you a lot of confidence in how to actually present yourself as a candidate, and actually help you seek roles in data science a bit easier. So actually, let me go ahead and just share what expand a little bit more about what you're going to learn from this session. So we're going to talk about a couple of things. So the first 5 tips that we're going to talk about. So there's 10 tips in total. The first 5 tips is going to be all about how to optimize your job search. And we're also going to cover some of the differences between the different data science roles. And then we're going to have a short Q&A break where we can answer some of your questions. And then after that, the next 5 tips will be all about how to present yourself as a candidate when you have your interviews, and then some helpful tips that I found when I was in my journey to becoming a data scientist to help you kind of prepare for your data science interviews. Yeah, so let's get started. So I guess I'll start by talking a little bit about me. I can Kinsey shared a little bit more, so I think I'm just going to dive in more in detail. So I actually started my journey as a software engineer. So ever since I was at a young age, I was really passionate about technology and really just building tools or building software that really, that people will use, and they'll actually make a difference. So when I had an opportunity to really learn computer programming when I was a teenager, I really hopped on it, and I got some books on programming, and I just dived into it. And I eventually was able to find some opportunities at school, and also some gigs professionally where I can dive in and kind of build some websites for some of my friends and family, and also work part-time at some technology companies that was where I lived nearby. And then eventually that kind of circled into doing some internships while I was in college, and then I eventually graduated with my computer science degree from Florida Tech, which is where I'm actually which is where I actually call home. Right now, I live in San Francisco. I'll probably get into more of that story, but so after I graduated, I worked for 4 years as a software engineer at Lockheed Martin, and I was working on a team that was building a fire control, a targeting system for the F-35. Which is probably was at the time, I think it probably still is at the time, was probably one of the most high profile projects that was being funded by the government. And it was just really amazing to just be working with a team and having to get exposed to software that was millions of lines of code. I really enjoyed my time there. Learned a lot and got to do see a lot of amazing things. And then I think along the way, I was really starting to see, where do I want to actually take my career? Where do I want to go? And then I started thinking back about some of the cool, amazing things that I learned, and got exposed to while I was studying computer science at Florida Tech. And one thing that really popped in my brain was like machine learning. Um, I, and I was really, and so machine learning, and then just doing things of data. I knew that, oh, what would really be cool is if I can somehow uh, take data, do something with data now. Like if I can combine, data, like analyzing data. I loved like doing research. I loved digging into information and try to find some nuggets that I can actually show off and just present to people. And then I also loved coding. I loved programming. So I wonder if there's I wonder if there's a way I can actually combine data and also programming. And I wasn't actually aware of the term data science at the time. It was just something that I discovered after doing some research and talking to people. And then I was like, data science. This is something that definitely will actually fits the kind of career I think I'd love to do. So over time, as I started doing some more research, talking to more people, even going to some conferences out of town about data science, I decided, hey, you know what? I want to actually, this is actually something I want to do. And if I'm really serious about it, I should actually commit my time full time into pursuing data science instead of trying to learn the skills on my own. I was taking some courses, taking some online courses like Coursera, learning R and stuff like that on my own. While I was working full time at Lockheed. So if I'm really serious about this, I should kind of commit my whole my whole 100% of my time. And I did kind of like a kind of a risky move, where I took time off of my company at Lockheed, and I moved to San Francisco. So I packed all my stuff in a all my stuff, and then I just moved from Orlando, which is where I was living at the time, to San Francisco, and I studied data science full time at a boot camp. And then after I finished the boot camp, I graduated from the boot camp. I was eventually able to find a job as a data scientist for a startup where I was building a computer vision product that uses machine learning to identify food from images taken from a smartphone, and then not only identify what the foods are, but also tell users the calorie and nutritional content of the food. So I worked there as a data scientist for several months. And then much later, I was able to use my experience there to actually get a job working as an analyst, an analytics engineer for Tesla, where while I was working at Tesla, I worked on a team whose role was to actually develop tools and scripts and that will actually monitor the performance of Tesla's solar products. So at the time, we had customers, from residential customers and commercial customers that had Tesla's solar products. So one of my jobs was write tools to actually collect data from that was being emitted from these different products, and actually analyze it, and actually create reports that was share with different stakeholders. And then more later on during my time at Tesla, I actually started doing some more analysis on some of Tesla's battery storage products, so the Tesla's Powerwall, Power Pack. And then near the end of my time there, I did some work on some of the machine learning algorithms that the data scientist on my team was working on to actually detect failures in the solar panels. And then, along probably early 2019, on January, Tesla had a bit of a shakeup, reorganization, and I got laid off from my job. So over the next few months after that, I kind of floated, try to do do some volunteer work, and then I eventually decided to become a freelancer. So today I work with various different companies, startups, organizations, doing kind of a combination of some data science, machine learning work, and also some software development work. So bringing back some of my skills that I learned as a software engineer, doing embedded software development, and working on a variety of different things. So embedded software engineering, and also some, as like I mentioned before, some data science, some little bit of web development. So kind of combining all the skills that I've learned and just trying to add value, and just really make a difference where I can. Awesome. So let's start with the first tip that I have for you. And I think this is one that's, I think this is really, I know what I kind of fell into when I first started uh, my journey as a data scientist, is that, you hear the term, data science. And one of the first things people want to do is they want to focus on the titles of, oh, I want to become a data scientist, because that's like, that's the term that's kind of the most appealing term, like, and because you're just so focused on the title of data science so much, you don't really get a sense of all the other. So let me start over. So with so data science in itself is like a very broad term. It can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. And I know for myself, when I started out in my journey, I was fixated on just really becoming, trying to get the title of data scientist, because that's, in the news and the media, that's the term that seems to be kind of to come up a lot. Oh, it's the sexiest job of the 21st century. You got to get the job, yes, data scientist title, because if you don't, then that anything other than any other title else but the data scientist is just not, it's just not appealing. It's not sexy. But as I started learning more and more into the field and learning more and more, I started to realize there is so much things or aspects, or so much things that go into into data science, that no one person can actually know everything. Like, if you think about one of the things that you may have seen this kind of infographic that come online if you do any searching on Google data science, that you have the different Venn diagrams. You have one circle is the software development, and the other circle you have like maybe statistics, other circle you have like mathematics, you may have some other circles, overlapping circles that cover different domain areas, different skill areas that data science is kind of an intersection of. I think all too often, when someone is coming out into the field for the first time, they think, okay, well, a data scientist needs to know all these things. They need to know all the different skill areas in order to really become really effective at their job. And I think maybe, and I think for one thing, makes a lot of people who are starting out really overwhelmed, and because they feel like they have to know a lot of everything in order to become a data scientist. And I know that was actually experience that I had to myself when I started out as well. And the fact of the matter is, in reality, most data scientists that you see out there working right now, they might be experts in maybe one or two of these areas, but because the field itself is so broad that it's almost impossible for any one person to know all these skill sets. So instead of focusing on a single title, the thing you want to do is you want to actually look at a job description. So any job description that you see online for a data scientist, you actually want to look at the job description and determine if it's actually a type of job that you'd want to do. So another thing that I realized, and that soon after a couple years into my data science careers, the term data science actually means different things depending on the company you work for. So if you look at one company, for example, let's say like a company like Facebook, the term data scientist could actually mean, oh, this is somebody who's going to perform product analysis for a company. We're going to run A/B tests, help us determine what actions should we be taking, what decisions should be making on our product, some of the UI, user experience for our product, and also writing a lot of SQL at the same time. And then another term data science for scientist for another company, like maybe Google or some other uh, engineering company can mean something completely different. So it can mean, oh, this is somebody who's going to develop machine learning models and put them into production. So data science can mean very different things. It really depends on the type of company you work for, what are the specific needs that they need that they do. But term data science in general is all revolves around using data to help a company solve complex problems. So what I'm going to show you in the next slide is kind of 4 different roles in which a data scientist, a data science role can be grouped under. There are a lot of different types of roles and titles you can see out there, but for the most part, I find that you can actually break down these data scientist roles into 4 different categories. So if you think about any title, a job description that you see online, you think about it as kind of like a distribution of these 4 categories. Like, oh, this maybe like 50% of like a data analyst, or maybe 10% data scientist, and 22% data engineer, and maybe the rest a little bit of machine learning engineer at the end. So think about it as that way. So let's start by talking about the first type of role, a data analyst. So a data analyst is considered as somebody whose their role is to perform more kind of well-defined tasks with a company. So these are where they'll examine the data set and they'll answer kind of common questions, or like maybe more descriptive or diagnostic analysis. They'll give me the summary of like sales for such and such date, and some of the analysis that they'll do, some of the trends and insights that they'll discover from the data, they'll typically be put in a report. They'll use maybe a tool like Tableau, Power BI. When I was actually working at Tesla, one of the outputs we used was like, some of those small little reports that I created for some of these stakeholders. I would use SQL. So data analysts read a lot of SQL. Like SQL is probably one of the biggest, most important skill sets that a data analyst has, as well as the data scientist and data engineer and machine learning engineer. That's probably, I'd say, tell a lot of people who are that I mentor, like SQL is probably the most important skill set you want to know as a data professional, because it's just used a lot in many of the work that you do, because most of the data sets that you'll work with is structured and it's stored. They're stored in a relational database system. So SQL. So use a lot of SQL, and then they'll output the query results in like Excel or like more of a data visualization tool that's either built up in-house or maybe a proprietary tool like Tableau. And then so their skill sets more of a data analyst is more kind of a basic level of statistics. So they may do any statistical analysis that they do might just be kind of basic statistics, like computing the mean or average or standard deviation. And then oftentimes they'll either present some of their findings to the stakeholder in the organization. So some of the other titles, one kind of mini tip I would give to people who are also looking for jobs is to search under different titles. So other titles you can look for data analyst titles. You can search for the business analyst or a business intelligence analyst or data visualization analyst. Or what you can do is literally like anything analyst. So a marketing analyst or financial analyst or intelligence analyst. So anything plus analyst, you'll find some sort of data. It'll be a relevant title for data analyst. So that's data analyst. And then a data scientist is basically takes the basic skills, the work of a data analyst, and just expands on it. So what a data scientist the type of job work that data scientists are really good at is really um, tackling more open-ended problems, more exploratory questions that companies might have about their data, about their products. That really requires somebody who could come in and actually explore the data using more advanced statistical techniques like A/B testing or machine learning, and to answer more of those complicated questions. And what a data scientist might do, some of the results that a data scientist might be able to answer for a company is helping them determine, okay, whether or not a company should ship a product or not. How to, let's see, how to based on historical data, some historical trends of sales data. Let's say you're an airline company, like based on some historical prices. How should I optimize the pricings of my tickets to maximize profit? So those are some of the questions that will require more kind of advanced analytical techniques that a data scientist is really specialized to do for a company. So other questions that, not other questions, other titles that you might find a data scientist under, like decision scientist or predictive modeler, data analyst. Sometimes, depending on the company you work for, like some of the, as I said before, the work as a data scientist, the term data scientist and data analyst can be used interchangeably. And I think it's typically around like more smaller startups, smaller organizations where you might find that you really see kind of like a data scientist who kind of do kind of the mixture of both work of a data analyst. The terms tend to be used the most interchangeably. So that's the data scientist and a data engineer. So these are the guys whose job is to help build the infrastructure that actually acquires the data and stores the data that's used by the data scientists and the data analysts and other data roles. So what their skill set centers around is ETL processes. So developing scripts or tools that actually acquire the data from different data sources, either live or from some different data sources, and actually making sure that that data is consistent, the data quality, the data is consistent, and there's no it's consistent, it's secure, and it is also it meets the requirements of the projects or company's requirements. So other titles you might see, a data engineer, other roles or titles you might see him fall under. It's like a data science engineer, or big data engineer, BI engineer, data modeler. And then a lot of companies, you might even find data engineer under the software engineering term. So they might find them under the software engineering term, software engineering a title. Just as another side note, some depending on the company, a data scientist or data engineer or some of these other data roles that we're discussing might fall underneath the software engineering department. So you won't be surprised if you might find some of the titles, like you might find a data role, like a role that's data related, be given like a title that doesn't seem to be like reflective of the work that you're doing. So in this case, a data engineer might actually be giving. So you might have a software engineering. You might be working as a software engineer, but might be doing data engineering work, or you might be a data scientist, but you're given the title software engineer. That's just something that happens that I thought I would know. So the last role we'll talk about before I move on to some of the other tips I have for you is the machine learning engineer. So the machine learning engineer, this is somebody whose job is to take So a data scientist, they will they might build a model, machine learning model that does something. And what a machine learning engineer will do is they'll take the model that a data scientist will develop, and then their concern is, okay, well, what do I need to do to make sure that this model is uh, can be optimized to run in a production environment? And you'll see machine learning engineers come up a lot when you're working with companies that are startups, or companies that have where AI is kind of their product. So they're concerned. Okay, let's build some tools. They're focused on building some of the infrastructure that will actually deploy the model, get get the features that the model needs to perform the predictions, and just making sure that the model actually performs. You can be able to deliver the predictions that the company needs at within the timelines that they need it for. So other titles that a machine learning engineer would fall under is like a data engineer. Sometimes you might find them kind of interrelated, kind of bit. The work of a data engineer might kind of somewhat overlap with what a machine learning engineer does. AI engineer, deep learning engineer, and then like software engineer. Those are other common titles you might see a machine learning engineer fall under. All right. So so the next step. So as I mentioned before, you want to really think about what kind of work you want to do as in data science. But I would even go even further beyond this point. So not just about the specific data science job role, but also start thinking about the type of company you want to work for. And so think about the size of the company you want to work for, the industry, whether you want to work for a company that does more B2B services or B2C services. And what this does, it not only does it help you kind of focus your skill set, like what type of skills that you want to work for, you want to actually learn, because every one of these roles that we talked about requires a certain specific skill sets you want to learn and develop. But what it also does, every company that has their own particular need or particular problems, unique problems that they solve. So by focusing on not only on the role but the company you work for, that allows you to even tailor your job search and also the skills, even the projects you work on, to actually appeal to that company. So when you actually go and interview with a company or talk to a recruiter or someone who works at that company, you can say, hey, I've worked on some projects, I have some relevant skill sets that I built that actually will appeal to this company, and that'll actually help you stand out even stronger as a candidate for that company. So actually, when I was started my journey as a data scientist, I actually tried I applied some variation of this tip, especially if you're not even sure of where you want to get started. What do you want to do? What kind of role you want to work for? What kind of role do you want to do as a data scientist? What kind of company would I want to work on? What I work with? You can actually use this tip, and it'll actually help you save a lot of time of trying different things, and of course, so actually, it would save you from going down one particular path like for many years and realizing, oh, this isn't for me. So the first step you can do is start by just taking a step back and just brainstorming all different roles, companies, and industries that you think you might like, you think that sounds appealing to you, and then start doing some light research on each of these each of these items on your list. So do some research, do some Google, maybe use ChatGPT to get some a high level understanding of what either these companies do and industries, and then that'll allow you to kind of quickly eliminate items that you think that doesn't sound appealing to you as you do the research. So over time, once you get maybe a sizable list of like maybe 5-10 items that you think you really want to pursue, now this is when you actually can go out and go find people who have these jobs, who work in these industries, who has some of these roles that you're interested in you're interested in pursuing, and actually reach out to them and have informational interviews with them, where you pick their brains, ask them questions about what it's like to work for this company, what it's like to work as a data scientist or data engineer at this company. Um, and what I did when I started, I made heavily use of LinkedIn to actually answer all these questions. So I'll find a couple of people on LinkedIn that I was interested in reaching out to, and I would send them cold emails asking them for their time, 5-10 minutes of your time, to answer some of the questions that I have. And some of the responses that they gave me could really help me kind of inform my process, really help me figure out, okay, what are some of the things I should be learning? What are some of the things I should be focusing on? What are their recommendations on things I should be doing? And from there, it'll actually give you some more ideas. Okay, what are some companies that really are a right fit for me? What we want to maybe what are some roles that maybe are not really a right fit for me now, that maybe I want to maybe pursue much later. So you can use some of this to help you kind of help you develop your own strategy, your own job search strategy, and identify, kind of zero in on the kind of companies, the ideal companies that you want to focus on. And from there, you can actually start building like a pipeline of companies you can start applying to, doing some interviews with, and then using those companies to kind of help you sharpen your skill sets. I mean, you might have a group of tier 2 or tier 3 companies that are interesting, but you're not really passionate about. You can use that to kind of practice your interviewing skills and practice how you present yourself. And then you have your other tier 1 companies, which are companies that you really want to work at, that you can actually prepare. You can use your experience at the other companies, the tier 2 or 3 companies, to practice for. So over time, as you do this over and over again, and this is something that could take you a couple of months to work on. As you repeat this process, you'll start becoming more and more refined in how you actually interview. You'll be able to refine your interviewing process. You'll be able to refine, your resume, how you actually talk to these companies, and then eventually you'll crack it, and then you'll be able to get a role. And then speaking to the last point about tailoring, like your strategy, you can actually leverage your background. And so any of the skills, so data science is it's kind of like a force multiplier. So so you can apply any of the work that you've done before data science. So let's say if you were a software engineer, so I was a software engineer, for example. So taking my background as a software engineer, and adding now the skills that I've learned as a data scientist, that allowed me to actually look for, like, find opportunities where I can actually, I can come in as a software engineer for a company, and then use some of my data science, the skills as a data scientist to actually work on tasks, or maybe work on different tasks, or solve problems for a company that maybe that different tasks for the company that they maybe didn't have they didn't really have that somebody didn't really have time to work on. So one tactic that you can think about as you're starting to search for work roles is thinking about, okay, well, how can I use my previous experience to find a company where you're doing similar work, but you're actually able to use data science to actually solve a particular need, or a problem that they have. Yes. So and then the fourth tip that I would have for you would be to network. So networking has been something that's really been helpful for me, not only in helping me get my first job out of college, but some of the other roles that I was able to get, as not only as a full-time as a data scientist, but also as a freelance professional. So going to meetups, hackathons, and any industry specific events. So let's say, for example, you wanted to work as a data scientist for, let's say, a marketing agency. So find any companies, any industry specific events within marketing, uh, and just if you just by going to any of these events that are happening in town, and then really, I'd say really open yourself up to serendipity. Um, I'd say, you may not find somebody there who's actually looking for a data scientist, but that person may know somebody who is looking for a data scientist, or maybe looking for someone for skill sets. So by just going to these different events and just kind of opening yourself up to whatever happens, um, you know, you know, you don't you actually will increase the likelihood of you finding somebody who finding some opportunities. And then another tactic that I found really helpful was also going on social media. So posting comments on, uh, being active on social media, like going on LinkedIn, writing posts, sharing some of your knowledge about data science, commenting on other people's posts. Um, uh, some Sometimes it might allow you to find people, someone who's recruiters or anybody's looking for someone of your skill sets will see it, and then they'll reach out to you for an opportunity. And then let's see, so I have one more before the Q&A break. So and then just kind of stopping on top of the networking thing. So uh, my tip would be to look for look for opportunities kind of outside of what everybody else goes. So you know, I know a lot of people, when I go and want to look for a data science role, they'll look for jobs on company like Indeed, LinkedIn, Glassdoor, and these are very popular sites that a lot of people are using. But I would advise you to kind of try to look outside of those areas, and try to look for other areas or job boards where not a lot of people know about, or less people know about. Um, so because that'll allow you to find kind of hidden gems maybe hidden opportunities or gems that nobody else is seeing. So let's say kind of going kind of the more niche strategy as been explaining. So let's try to find maybe job boards that are specific to industries that you're interested in applying for. So let's say if you're trying to work for a government job, look for job boards specific to the U.S. government, and then also trying to look for also I would also advise you looking for any roles or any job boards, or looking at kind of communities that you're part of, and looking for any job boards or data science, or that are actually accessible to you. So because many times one of the things I've realized is sometimes some of the best jobs out there aren't always heavily advertised. So by kind of trying to be a little bit thinking outside of the box and trying to find ways to kind of find your opportunities, whether that's networking, or looking for opportunities at different job boards, or even trying to reach out to somebody on someone on social media, and trying to see if you can maybe create your job, or think of a problem that they have, and try to maybe create your own little data science job that solves that problem. It allows you to really find some of these opportunities, or find kind of these little nuggets that nobody else is checking for, because they're just doing the same thing. Awesome. So I think we'll stop for kind of a short Q&A break, just to answer anybody's questions before I go through the other 5.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Daryl, thank you so much for those first 5 tips. I have learned so much just listening to this, so that was really great. Definitely appreciate that. So let's go ahead and have people just drop in the comments any questions that you might have. We'll spend just a few minutes here with the Q&A, and then we'll definitely follow up with the Q&A at the end of the presentation. But yeah, y'all go ahead and just drop those questions in the chat. We did have one question early on. So if someone is weak in programming, can they still excel in data science? And maybe if they are weak in programming, giving us some advice on that.
Yeah. So I would say, depending on the role, some roles in data science emphasize a certain skills. So um, you like so yeah, some roles emphasize certain skill sets in data science. So you don't have to be an expert in everything. Um, uh, so obviously, like let's say I would actually recommend that person if um, to look at Python, not Python, but SQL. Like SQL, as I mentioned, is probably one of the strongest, most important skill sets in data science to know. So I would, if you're weak in like let's say program like Python, I would probably encourage you to kind of focus on other aspects of the data science stack. So particularly SQL, and get very good at that, and then once you actually get a role, a data role, then you can work on kind of building out your competency in these other areas. Now, in terms of things you can do to actually grow your programming skills, um, it's actually more of a kind of a practice. Working on what I found is it's funny because I've been programming for so long. Sometimes I even forget how it's like for someone who's starting out. But what I found particularly useful is just working on different solving programming problems. So going on a Leak Code or HackerRank. Like HackerRank is actually one of the resources that I love a lot. So just for actually more than Leak Code, for actually practicing programming questions and practicing programming. So going in on sites like HackerRank to practice different problems, and then working on projects, spending some time outside of your work, just working on different coding projects to um, to really really hone in your competencies, because programming is something that it just, the more you do it, the more problems you solve, time you spend with it, the more it just still feels like a second language you're learning.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
total sense. One of the things that you mentioned was projects. And so I did mention at the very beginning, High Counselor has some really great live projects that we run through LinkedIn, and then also within the program. So also just a great way to get those skills. I wanted to ask a question, and guys, again, feel free to drop any questions that you've got in the chat. But I did want to ask a question about networking. So I loved how you hit on that. I know that networking can be intimidating, especially starting out. And so just giving us a little tidbit on how, the process that you took to get to a place where you felt comfortable to really put yourself out there.
Yeah, I know. Well, it was kind of something for me, that was nerve wracking for me, especially having to cold email people and asking them for their time. Some tips that I found was pretty helpful was actually kind of, let's say you're trying to send emails to somebody, or emailing somebody for their time, whether it's on LinkedIn or just maybe you found their email contact and just send them a cold email. Timing when you send your emails is something that I found particularly helpful. So obviously you wouldn't want to send an email to somebody who is it's like on a Friday, because they're probably thinking about the weekend. So what I usually like to do is I'll probably craft all the emails that I want to send out over the weekend, and I'll, like, as soon as the be like on like Monday morning, first thing Monday morning, I'll send them all out. And even now, like Google has these really it's this cool feature where you can actually schedule your emails to get sent out at a later time. So you're gonna write your emails out and you schedule your emails to get sent out at, let's say, I want to send out my email like 8 a.m. on Monday morning. Um, I find that the best times for people to really who will get responses, get the best time to send your emails are usually around kind of morning or afternoon or early afternoon on like beginning of the week, because that's when people are actually checking their emails. So like timing of the emails is really important. That I found was really helpful, and really, and then also once you're actually making use of some, when you actually get a response and you're scheduling some time, really being what's the word I want to say, really being really consider the time. Maybe saying, okay, I only want 5 to 10 minutes of your time, like five. Or it's 5 to 10 minutes of their time, or really, so you're making it easy for them to actually say yes. You're not asking about an hour of their time, or you're not asking for a lot from them. And sometimes if they can't even get to you, if they don't have time, you can even just say, hey, I know you're busy, so if it's easier, I can actually write you, email you my questions, and you can actually get back to me when you can answer them at your convenience. So try to make it easy for them to actually respond and say yes. And then just obviously understanding that everybody's busy. So sometimes you might have to reach out to a lot of people, like send out like 15 or 20 emails just to get, like, let's say maybe five responses back. That helps. And yeah, and then sounds like going out there and kind of networking in person. I just like to treat it as a I just like to I try to treat it as much as possible as kind of a casual conversation.
Mhm.
I try not the and I what I usually like to do is I like to go to kind of events that I find interesting, that I like to do. So that way it doesn't seem more like a work thing, but more it's like, oh, I'm actually learning something from this event. I'm actually getting something out of the event, um, as well. I'm not. It's not like I'm trying to, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, you're like, just getting both things. You're getting something out of it, and then you also have the opportunity to meet people. So it's like a win-win.
yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, we've got a couple questions. And so I promise that I'm not going to skip over anyone. I'm going to read a couple of these questions and then dive back into the presentation. So we may save your question for the end, but all questions will definitely get answered. So we have someone that has commented that they have 4+ years of experience in Java full stack development and are looking into more of a data or business analyst role. And so, kind of understanding that there's going to be, still wanting to use some of that knowledge that they've already got in that
Yeah.
Java full stack development. So, what top skills do they need to be focusing on if they're looking to make that change?
Yeah, so I would say really focusing on your ETL. So any I have to say, like, some of the specific tools is not really matter, but it's more of the process. So thinking about uh, what I would start out, if you want to become more like the, so his question was how to become, he was a full stack engineer, he wants to become business intelligence analyst.
Data business analyst roles, yeah.
Data business analyst. Okay. Yeah. So one of the tactics that I find will work, it's kind of starting where you are. So uh, obviously, as a being a full stack engineer, probably the first skill I'd work at, I'll learn, if you haven't already learned it, is SQL. Um, and then for data for business analysts, so learning SQL. And then from there, you can probably start by trying to find opportunities where you can actually kind of leverage that your skills in software development, and then using that to get work, using that to leverage that into getting more experience in data analyst. So I would look at maybe so now after learning SQL, try to see if you can find maybe some work at like a company or a startup or small organization where maybe you're working as a data engineer first. That's probably like the easiest way in. And then once you work as a data engineer, then trying to find work where you're doing some more of that, more data analyst part. So I would recommend this person maybe in addition to learning SQL, maybe look into like ETL, learning ETL processes, or find projects, work on projects where you actually collect, getting data, you're performing ETL, like extract, transform, load, maybe either into a database or some other data storage, cloud storage tool, and then using that to kind of get your first data role. And then once you get your first data role, that's when you can actually start kind of building your skill sets into other areas that you're interested in.
Perfect. Thank you. And then our last question before we move back into the presentation, and again, we'll make sure that all questions do get answered. But we have one viewer who wants to know if the data analysis market is saturated.
Oh, yeah. This is I think that's a good question. There's a lot of people who are data science is something that's so when I started data science, it was like 2015, 2016. So it's like really early, and now it's just kind of crazy looking back how prevalent it is today. Well, you have a lot of companies who are looking for someone specialized in data science, or someone who has skills as a data analyst. So I think now there's a lot of demand for data and analysis, or AI, machine learning, and then there's a lot of people who are who obviously are interested, who have the skill sets. So I think the challenge is there's a lot of demand, and there's a lot of people who are looking for it. So the challenge, who are seeking roles. So the challenge is, how do you actually make yourself unique? How do you make yourself stand out from from other people who may actually have the same skills? So the trick is trying to find something about your background, something about yourself that makes you stand out. Maybe it's some of your experience you have. Maybe it's something. Maybe it's something that maybe it's something about your experience. I know for myself, like one of the things that makes me kind of stand out as a data scientist is just kind of like my engineering background. Just that I've worked in a variety of different engineering systems, not just as different engineering tools. So as doing some firmware development, and even some mobile development and some web development. So I have like a lot of kind of in-depth experience in software development, and that I can actually leverage to build a lot of end-to-end systems. So I think trying to find that one thing that makes you interesting, that makes you stand out from other people, is what you probably would want to do in order to kind of what you need to do in order to market yourself to employers.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. All right. I'm going to turn it back over to you for the remainder of the presentation, and we will get the rest of these questions answered at the end. And as you all are continuing to watch, just keep thinking about questions that you want to ask Daryl. Certainly is just so full of knowledge and advice. So drop those questions in the comment section as you think of them, and we will get to them at the end. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you. Okay.
Awesome. Okay, awesome. So my next step is so a lot of companies once you get a job, get your role, you get you apply, you network with somebody who's interested in you, and you start getting scheduled for interviews with companies. One of the things you're going to find is a lot of some of the interviews. As a data scientist, a lot of many of the interviews are going to really going to rely, questions you're going to ask in an interview is going to rely on you having knowledge about the company. And I'll give you a couple examples. So one of the questions you might get, and it really depends on the type of role you're applying for. So you might come in a situation where you're interviewing for a data scientist, a product analyst for a company. Let's say it's a furniture company. Actually, that's actually the case for me. I was actually interviewing as a data analyst for a furniture company um, in the Bay Area, and I was asked some product questions. And this is earlier on in my career, early on, and they're asked me some from business oriented questions, product questions that I wasn't really able to answer because I didn't have knowledge about the company and what they do. So you know, obviously I didn't get that job. I didn't get that job. But one of the things I learned was it's really important to have walk in do a lot of research about the company before you walk in an interview. So every company you interview, you get an interview for, you should at least know like what the company does, what the product and services that they launch, how the company makes money. And one of the ways like to find that out is if the company is is publicly traded. Um, they have a stock ticker. So one of the things I'll do, I'll go on the website and I'll look for like the annual report, like maybe the most recent annual report, and I'll download it and I'll read the annual report or just skim through the annual report. And in particular, I'll look at the part of the annual report where they talk about like the business, like the business, what they do, who are their competitors, what are some of the challenges that they deal with. Like that section itself is like gold. They'll tell you everything that you need to, from probably a big comprehensive overview about what the company does and what are some of the projects they look at, what are some of the things that they're looking to do over the next few years, what are the things that they've done, and what are some of the challenges that they've been having in the business. So reading the annual report. Also, what's helpful is actually if the company has a blog, and if they have an engineering blog, and if you're trying to get a job as like a data engineer or machine learning engineer, I would look at their company blog. I'll look at their engineering blog, and because that's going to help you understand some of the tool set, the internal tools that they build, some of the problems that they solve, and how they actually solve it. What are some of the tools that they use to solve the problem? And so then I'll give you the sense of what their tech stack is and all this stuff, what work do they do, and then also give you some good questions even to ask the interviewers during the interview. I would also look at social media, skim through their social media accounts, see what kind of things that they talk about, what are some of the things that they care about, what are some of the things that they're some of the things that they're looking to do over the next couple of months. That'll actually also help you inform you on some help you being more having more context to some questions, particularly questions. Let's say you're in. I'll give you another example. Let's say you are. So oftentimes when you like one of the things you might get asked, depending on the company you're interviewing for. So one of the things interviewers may often ask you is they'll give you a scenario where let's say we just recently launched this product. And this we recently launched this new feature to our product, and we want to know how we recently launched this new feature to the product, and we want to figure out whether or not. Okay, let me give you more context. So let's say we recently launched this feature to the product, and let's say this product hit X met this. Let's say average sales for our product went up, but they did convert the let me see. So the average let's see. So average sale, the profit that we made went up, but then the conversion rate went down. How we determine whether or not to we want to ditch this product or not. You want to abandon the project or keep going. So having kind of knowledge about the company, some of what they're trying to do, what they're concerned about, what's their focus, kind of that knowledge will be able to help you kind of craft a more nuanced answers to that question. Yeah. So and then yeah. So Yeah. So yeah, doing that research is really important. And then I would also say one thing I'd also do. Sometimes recruiters will also give you the names of the interviewers, the people who's going to be interviewing you. So researching them like ahead of time, like going on their LinkedIn and researching them, uh, will actually give me an idea of how to actually how to actually prepare for the interview. So let's say, for example, if I'm a data scientist, I'm interviewing for a data scientist role for a company, and the person that I'm going to be talking to is like a product manager, then I know, okay, well, if he's a product manager, then I probably don't want to. I don't want to. I want to actually speak in layman's terms. Like he's not gonna probably not gonna know much about data science. So I need to make sure when I'm talking to him, I'm actually crafting my answers, explaining my answers in a way he can understand. Because because as a data scientist, you're going to be working with technical people and non-technical people. So I need to make sure that I'm able to actually, uh, I'm communicating as somebody who, so when I talk to him, he can understand what I'm saying, and then I need to also show that I understand the product, the product that I'm working on. Funny enough, actually, when I interviewed once with a security company in San Jose, and I actually had to sit down with a product manager, and he did ask what the company did, and I wasn't able to answer that. So, and I didn't get the job. But yeah, that's why it's really so important to just know what the company is before you interview. Yes. So the next tip would be to really so it's about really optimizing your resume. And one of the things that I've seen a lot, in particular when I review resumes, I look at other people's resumes, is that it's not the resumes. Sometimes the resumes aren't always kind of optimized for kind of a non-technical person to read it, and that's really important because the first person who looks at the resume when you submit it to a to a applicant tracking system, or even when you're networking with someone at a job fair or even LinkedIn, or recruiter on LinkedIn, it's going to be somebody who doesn't really know about data science, or he's not really knowledgeable about the work that you'll do as a data scientist. So it's really important that the resume is actually written for them to understand and not for a technical person to understand. On average, recruiters, anyone who will probably spend probably on average 10 seconds to review a resume. So if within 10 seconds, if they look at their resume and they're not saying, okay, well, this guy is amazing, this guy is really qualified for the job, then you're not going to you're probably not going to get contacted for an interview. And actually, this is the test that you can actually do with your resume. Like I would actually challenge you guys to do this. So I would say I would find a couple of people, like 5 or 10 people, right, or maybe more, and then give them your resume and have them look at it for 10 seconds. So you'll give them the resume, have them look at it for 10 seconds, and take it away from them, and then ask them what's your impression about the resume? What they think from looking at the resume for 10 seconds? What's their impression? And their answer to your question will tell you everything about how you're presenting yourself in your resume. So my tip would be for you to really make your resume blow. Change your resume to make it really impress the recruiter. So in a resume, you want to make sure you're adding accomplishments that highlight some of the work you've done, some of the awesome work you've done, and don't be afraid to brag. Don't be afraid to brag. Don't be afraid to brag and explain, highlight some of the amazing things you've done. Some tips that I found really helpful is any project that I've worked on in the past, I always try to think about how can I actually emphasize the kind of the impact that I had in terms on the company that I was working for. Think about, okay, well, did I save the company money? If so, how much did I save? Did I reduce How did I make the company more efficient? If so, how? And if I can't really find a number or some sort of quantifiable impact, I like to talk about, okay, what's the scope? Like if I'm working on, if I wrote some software, if I'm developing a little software tool, how many people were use this software tool? How many people was it? Like hundreds of people? Was it thousands? Think about like scope, like reach, like how many people are actually using that your product that you're using. Um, uh, and then what another thing that I see a lot of uh, that I see a lot when I'm looking at people's resumes is that they also add add details that really distract from the message. So like a lot of fluff or details like that are not relevant. So if you're somebody, for example, who has a lot of years experience underneath their belt, like you know, um, adding your high school, like what high school you go to, isn't going to be relevant. So that can be taken out. Any relevant details like volunteer or club involvement, it's not. You can take that out. And even GPA or SAT scores. But I think you could take it out unless it's actually something that's going to be really impressive. Then I would keep that in. So let's say, for example, let's say you're applying for a role at Google, right? Um, and let's say your GPA, you have a GPA. So you put your GPA, you have a 3.2 GPA at like some sort of lesser known college. Um, uh, that might actually, so that probably wouldn't really be appealing. So I would take it out. But if you like say if you studied at, let's say, like a prestigious school, like let's say Harvard, and you have like a very high GPA or pretty good GPA, then that will actually be that actually stand out and make you look more impressive. But if it's like, yeah, so it make you look more stand out. But if it's like say uh, you have a lower GPA from like a less reputable school, that can actually hurt again, actually work against you, because it could be a recruiter might look at that and say, hey, well, we expect all of our candidates to be really accomplished people and really really smart and talented people. So seeing a kind of a lower GPA from a less reputable school can actually kind of count against you. So I'll probably keep those things out unless it's actually it's so only so I guess the point I'm trying to say is only include details in your resume that's going to make you that's going to make you look impressive, and take out anything that's like that's because you're trying to create a story. You're trying to create some sort of story, and if any details that as you look at your resume, if you see any details in the resume that's going to take away from like uh, you present yourself as like a qualified, a rock star candidate, I'll take that out entirely from the resume. And then some other tips that I found helpful is rearranging your resume. So always including some of your most sellable qualities on the top of the resume. So if you studied at a very prestigious university, maybe putting that on top at listing that your education that's the first item in the resume. Or maybe if you worked at a very high profile company, maybe putting that first, and then maybe some of the other things later. So the recruiter will actually see that first. That's like the first thing that they're going to see, and that's going to get their attention. And then another tip I would say I'll give for you before I move on to the next slide is to sometimes it might help to change the job titles of your job titles of your work experience to kind of reflect the actual work being done. So when I was working at Tesla, so my real job title is actually fleet engineer, which isn't really reflective of the data work that I do. So one of the things that I actually found when I was applying for opportunities was sometimes my resume would get passed up because my title was like fleet engineer, but even though I did work as a data scientist or data related work, someone looking at the resume wouldn't think I did so because of the title. So what a tip that I'll have for you that could help is just changing your title to be reflective of the work. I don't think exactly it's lying. I say it's okay. It's just giving you a title to really to actually to really just describe what you're doing for real. And then if they have a question about it on the interview, then you can actually bring it up. Yes. So we'll go on to the next couple tips. So the next tip would be, and this is particularly useful. I think this tip will be pretty useful when you're answering behavioral questions. So as a data professional, in tech, there's some questions that get commonly asked a lot, like tell me about a project that you worked on that you found was particularly challenging. Tell me about a time you worked with somebody that you disagreed with. And I know sometimes it could be hard. I found it hard to kind of find out different situations that kind of cover each of these questions. So one tip that I found was pretty useful was thinking about 2 or 3 projects that I worked in the past, and that I'm really that are kind of like some of my best work, and then just really tailoring my answers to kind of address some of these points. Because if you think about every project that you've worked on, there has some element. There's something about it that's kind of challenging, or something about it where you may have to work with somebody that you may have disagreed with, or maybe had some sort of disagreement with, or some sort of conflict that you have to deal with. So you can use you can actually just when you're answering these questions to an interviewer, you can actually emphasize these points a bit more. And then you can use the STAR technique. The STAR technique is a framework that I'm sure many of you are aware of. So you can use the STAR technique to kind of really as a framework to kind of explain these little instances and just really emphasize some of the details. So let's say, for example, you're working on a project where you built a machine learning model to predict user churn for a startup, and maybe one of the difficult challenges for that project was, okay, well, the data was messy. I had to get the data from, like, say, a data set that was the database that had a lot of inconsistencies. I had to spend a lot of time cleaning the data, maybe manually combing through the data and cleaning it, and maybe talking to some different engineers to kind of help me assess the quality of the data. So when a interviewer asks you about the challenge, then you can actually explain to the interviewer, okay, this is a challenge. What are some of the things that I did to actually get through that challenge, and what was the result? Maybe there were some aspects of that project where maybe you had to work with somebody who worked with another colleague on a team who was probably maybe you had a disagreement with, or maybe you guys didn't see eye to eye on certain things. So if an interviewer asks you a question about, tell me at a time where you had a disagreement, then you can maybe emphasize that point a little bit more. So I find this, like, by doing that, I find I can just kind of reuse the same projects and experience over and over again on my interviews, and just like emphasize different points. So I'm not trying to kind of think back like years in the past, or maybe centuries in the past, to try to think about, okay, what was an example of a project that I worked on that I had a disagreement with. I can just use some of the projects that I've worked on, like, recently, that's fresh in my mind. And just like emphasize certain aspects of the project to actually appeal to what the interviewer is looking for. Okay, so 2 more tips. So this tip is more kind of geared towards like take-home challenges. So take-home challenges so sometimes what companies will do in order to kind of get an assessment of your skill set, to kind of assess your skills, is they'll give you a take-home challenge. So give you a challenge, give you a data set, and they'll give you a couple of days to work on that challenge. So my advice would be to treat the take-home challenge as like a work project. So you really want to make sure that you're doing work that actually is that's actually quality work. So you want to make sure you're writing clean code, you're documenting your code. So you're writing documentation, you're writing mock doc. If you're having to turn it, if they wanted to turn it in a notebook, you're writing comments in the code and also writing markdown to kind of document your thought process and what you did. And some other tips that I would have for you is to never assume that. So if they give you a data set and they actually like fit a model on it or maybe perform some sort of exploratory analysis on the data, don't always assume that the data is okay. Sometimes what a company might do, just to test you, is they'll give you a data set. They won't even tell you that the data is dirty, and they'll just see, okay, let's put some dirty data into this data set, and let's just see what this person does. And if they can, if they if I find out that you didn't do your due diligence to check the data, that's like one of the ways they can probably even screen candidates out. It's like just checking to see if they whether or not they actually know to kind of do some basic data checking before they fit their model. So always check the data, and then if there's something in the data that doesn't make sense, then clean it, or even reach out to the interviewer, the recruiter, with someone who sent in the data set and ask questions about it. Because that's a lot of work. Some of the work you're going to be doing as a data scientist anyway. Like you're going to see oftentimes you'll see something in the data that doesn't look right, and you have to like reach out to the data originator, someone who took the data to kind of figure it out. What's this? You might have to reach out to your boss to kind of get understanding the schema, the database schema, so you can actually make sense of what are the tables you need to actually answer the questions you need to answer. So another thing you can do to make yourself really stand out is finding anything interesting in the data that you see. So if you're exploring some data and you're able to kind of pull in some information from other data sources. The data sources they're not given. Maybe you find like a public data set somewhere that's relevant to the problem. You can maybe pull it in and find some and use it to discover some new insight about the data that they haven't the data. Then I would highly encourage you to kind of just show it in your analysis, because that's the kind of work. Again, that's the kind of work as a data scientist, as a data person. You're paid to find insights in data. So if you can find something really interesting to the data that's relevant, but also outside of the scope that they're asking you for, go ahead, report it, show it. And then another thing, a last strategy that I have that's really helpful for optimizing your time on these take-home challenges is spending some time beforehand thinking about some like building like a little library of usable code snippets. So one of the things, as you start working on some projects as a data scientist, as a data professional, you'll realize there are certain things, certain pieces of code that you do over, you find yourself repeating over and over again. Like, for example, like I know when I'm exploring a data set, for example, I find that I'm always writing code to create pair plots of different figures. I might have some code that I do a lot where I'm doing train test splits on my data, and I'm doing cross, and I'm running some grid search or doing some cross validation on my data set. So it could be helpful to spend some time beforehand and just writing little code snippets ahead of time. Certain plots you create over and over again, or certain calculations you perform over and over again, and that's going to help you spend less time Googling how to do it and more time just like doing the analysis. Awesome. So my last and final tip is to don't give up. Seriously, don't give up. So it really takes on average probably 3 to 6 months for anyone to land their first role in data science, and then sometimes for some people it can take up to a year or more for some other people. And data science is something that getting your first tech job is something that it's tough, but it's very doable. I would say take any rejection that you see with learn to really put every rejection that you see in perspective. There are many reasons why you could be rejected from a job that has nothing to do with your skill set per se. Oftentimes when you walk in an interview, during an interview, you only see like you don't see what happens after you leave the interview. You only know what your experience, but there's many things that can happen after the interview that you just have no control over. So one of the things that reason why you could get let's say you could get rejected would be because maybe there was change in the job requirements. Now maybe they started interviewing for somebody like a data analyst role, and then after they interviewed a couple of people, they realized, hey, you know what? I think what we really need, actually need a data, we need a data engineer for this position. We don't need a data analyst. So they will reject you for that reason. Another reason could be they find someone internal to the company for that role. They decide to hire somebody internal to the company for the role instead. Or let's say the budget for the role at the end of the quarter was taken away, so they no longer have the money to hire a data scientist, or the role could be no longer needed. So there's a lot of different things that can actually happen on behind the scenes that can actually cause you to not be extended an offer. And then everybody faces rejection. Like getting a job is something that it's like rejection is part of the process. And I know sometimes it could feel like oh, I've been applying to so many jobs and I'm getting rejected, and I got rejected, but then I have a friend who she applied to the same job, I got rejected, and she got the job, and it could feel like the whole world's not fair. But I'll tell you, like everybody deals with it, and just keep trying, keep working on it. Just use your each interview as a way to learn, figure out what you did, what you're doing well, what you're not doing, and just keep hacking away at it, and you'll eventually get it. And I'm actually including a little quote here from somebody. So a little screenshot I took from rejected.us. I highly encourage you guys to check out this site. It has a lot of so this is a site where people post their rejections, and it can really help you kind of put your rejections to perspective. So this person, he applied to several different jobs, probably over 750 applications, and it took about probably 9 months before he got his first data science role. So so keep going at it, and you'll eventually get there. So in summary, I'll just kind of quickly summarize the 10 points. So first, don't focus on the job title. Target your research, your job search, and then leverage any background and skill sets you have before learning data science to get your job. And then use networking to find opportunities, find opportunities that are not advertised on social media or any job posting sites. And then try to look for opportunities in places that no one else is looking at, and research a company before the interview. Do as much research as you can, and then craft your resume so that'll be impressive for a recruiter to understand and want to actually pass you on to be interviewed by the engineers at the company. And then really using some of your experience, your own experiences and tailoring them to answer some common behavioral questions. Treating your take-home challenges like a work project instead of something you just need to get through, and just really persevering and keep persevering and hacking away at it until you eventually get your job. Awesome. So with that out of the way, I will now open myself up to more questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That was, just such valuable information. Thank you so much. I'm excited to get into these questions. So we have someone watching that has asked how they can sharpen their skills through real-time projects.
Oh, yeah. So I would say so you want to find a project that that is both relevant to the that's both data related. So this could be a project that you either came up on your own, or even it could be a project that maybe you able to find a project that maybe you do some pro bono work for a company. Every project that I find as a data scientist, or and really and someone in tech in general, there's always something you can learn from it, something new you're going to learn from it. So I would say just trying to find a project where you're working with some data, a data set, and then depending on the role you're trying to apply for, maybe you can find some projects that emphasize certain particular skill sets. So let's say, for example, you're trying to apply for a data scientist role, data science, machine, like maybe some sort of with data science where you do predictive analysis. Maybe one good project you work to find is like maybe a project where you're building a machine learning model. So find a data set, and probably the best data sets for that would be data sets that are probably dirty, or maybe data sets where you have to collect on your own, where you're doing stuff. You have to talk about how you collect the data, how you clean the data, and then some of the modeling techniques you use to fit the model and run the predictions. Yeah, I think that's the best way to show the skills. Just keep finding projects that are interesting to you, and then projects that you can actually show. I'd say, like, if it's good, it's cool to do a project, but I think what's also impressive is you can actually show the project. Like if you can include a link to the GitHub where people can see the project, or even deploy it live on Streamlit or AWS, where you can actually show the recruiter or the interviewer your project while you're speaking to them.
Perfect. Along those lines, this viewer also asked how they should go about selecting a project domain.
Yeah. So so my earlier in my talk, I also talked about this. I talked about kind of doing how you can actually figure out like a project, like there's a particular industry or company you want to look at. So I'd say if you're say, for example, you're interested in let's say a data analyst role for let's say a transportation company, right? So you could try to find some transportation data set. Go on Kaggle, try to find a transportation data set, or some transportation data, or maybe you can just try to find a website or scrape data from some website, and do your project based on that data. So every industry, every company has their own probably challenges. So if you can find a data set that's related, similar to the challenge that you'll be working on with that company, that's actually going to be so if you can find a data set that's similar to the kind of work you'll be doing as a data analyst at that company, and you're able to analyze it and present some the insights you learn from it, that's actually companies are going to see that and say, hey, this guy actually has some experience working with the data he worked on. Let's bring this guy in for an interview. So you can actually tailor the project you work on based on what you're interested in and the companies you want to work for.
Great. Yeah. I've got someone that asked earlier on. So they're have a master's in applied mathematics, looking for a data analyst position, or something related to their degree, and have been applying to a lot of places, but not getting any offers, and just wondering how they can do better in the job search process. And I think that was really summed up in that last slide that you had with the last, just the 10, the overview of the 10 tips that you gave us. But any advice to this person in particular?
Yeah. So you said he was applying to different roles, and is he getting jobs back? Is he getting responses back, or is he just getting like cold rejection?
So it just says specifically, but not able to get an offer. So not indicating that they're not getting interviews. But
okay, yeah. So it's so this one's pretty tough. So it sounds like he's making it very far into the process, but it sounds like he's just getting the offer stages where he's falling short.
Mhm.
So it tells me that he's pretty close. Like he's if he's making it to, like, to the final rounds, that means his skill set's really close. Um, so there's probably something about how he's kind of presenting himself
Mm.
that might be where he's falling short. So I would encourage him to probably think back about. I mean, you can ask the try to ask the recruiters for feedback, but hardly, as you know, most recruiters probably not going to give you the honest feedback from the companies, because of out of fear of being sued. So I would recommend really trying to, like, uh, after each interview, try to think about what you did good, what you did well, what you didn't do, what you did well at, and what are some of the things you didn't do well at. You can oftentimes after every if you kind of get a sense for after a while of doing interviews, you kind of get a sense of, like, what are some of the things that are working for you and not working for you. So I'll probably start by keeping track of that, and then I'd also encourage him to do some mock interviews, like with High
Mhm.
Counselor or for some other services, and trying to see and doing enough to just kind of get a sense of where he's what's missing.
Right, right. Yeah, that's great advice. And that's one of my favorite things with High Counselor is the mock interviews and the feedback that you get. Right, is so invaluable because when you're doing a mock interview, you're going to get that real, true feedback as opposed to, like you said, asking someone, a recruiter or someone in HR how the interview went.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Because
so
sometimes they might give it to you sometimes, but sometimes they don't. Actually, I actually had an experience where the recruiter was really looking out for me. He actually gave me the feedback, and I actually didn't like it.
yeah, you could have
I was
saved that.
mad.
You could have saved it.
Yeah, I didn't like it. I said, okay, yeah, but I didn't, yeah.
Oh, that's funny. All right. So our next viewer has asked, do internships play a major role prior to landing a full-time job?
Yeah, yeah, internships do help. Definitely help. If a company sees that you have a lot of relevant experience, um, internship experience as an intern, it could definitely help you getting a full-time job. Yeah, and actually, honestly, I count that as experience. Like, I'm in a camp where it's you can any projects that you've done could count as experience because with Bash is you have experience actually applying data science, like that, applying data science to solve some problem. Whereas it may not be a professional project, but it's actually a may not be a professional problem. It's like a personal problem or a problem you're interested in. So that all counts. Some other things you might consider doing is trying to find an open source project to get involved with, or even what might help is also trying to find maybe some companies where you can do some pro bono work just to kind of get yourself started. Um, uh, and then putting that as some experience
Mhm.
on your resume. That also helps as well. Yeah, but to answer your question, yes, internships do count as experience.
Perfect. All right, we've got one last question. So, viewer just wanting to know the challenges that you faced while working with ML models, and maybe giving some examples.
Yeah, so I think the challenge for me is I know one of the things I learned earlier on, um, and especially something that you can't really control because when you start out early in your career, you don't know very much about data science. I mean, you're doing the basics in the boot camp or any college or university, but then the problems are you don't know what you don't know, right? So you walk into a company and then you may not have the kind of the domain knowledge, the kind of the business knowledge that you need. So sometimes you may not know to ask certain questions. Oh, yeah, we need to build a machine learning model to do this XYZ. Well, how this model is going to be used? How are you going to use this model? Um, how are you going to use this model? What are some of the things that I need to know? Like, there's certain questions, there's certain kind of domain specific questions that you might need to ask them, or there's certain assumptions you're making about the company or the problem that you may not know to actually get clarification on. So I think that was probably some of the early problems that I had when I started out, just knowing how to actually ask the right questions to the business, to the people I was working with. And then so many other challenges that you'll probably come across when you're working with data. Like probably one of the biggest challenges, another challenge, or more of a kind of inconvenience, is like getting the data you need. So I have one story. I had a company that I'm working with as a contractor, as a startup, and then so they wanted to bring a data scientist in to help them do some analysis, to some customer lifetime value prediction on their data. And we spent like probably 6 months waiting for the company to give us the data that we need, and they never did it. So that project ended up dropping. So that's like probably another one of the kind of challenges that you're going to deal with as a data person, is like getting the data you need to do the work to do the work. In addition to just knowing how to answer the right questions, and asking the right questions, and making sure you're clarifying any assumptions that are making, not just on you, but other people are making. Yeah, and then obviously the machine learning, the modeling part is also a challenge, but that's something that comes with the biggest challenge is just really making sure that you have the right requirements, you have making the right assumptions, and you actually have the data that you need to solve the problem. At least for me, that was a challenge. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Those are all of the questions that we have. This has been, just invaluable information, and so appreciative. Again, just cannot say that enough for giving us your time. I am going to share a couple links in the comments, like I mentioned. So if you all are able to do so, we would really appreciate getting some feedback from let's see, we do have one more question, Gerald. So while I drop these links, if you want to answer that, do you know any specific sites where I can get different data to do a project for an analysis?
Yeah, so probably one of the most popular sites is Kaggle. So I'll go to Kaggle. I know Amazon, I don't have the name of the data set on my hand, but I know Amazon has this huge public, I think there's a GitHub repos where people provide links to get data sets from their domains. So I would look at, I think it's called Awesome Data Sets. If you just kind of Google that, like Awesome Data Sets GitHub, you might be able to find some, pull that up. I know Amazon, and I think Google also has some public data sets you can also use. Yeah, I think those are the ones that come up to me on top of mind, in terms of data sets you can find for your projects.
Perfect. Yeah. So I'm just dropping some links in the chat, you all. So we've got a feedback form that is wonderful for both Daryl and I. Would just love to get your feedback on today's session, and also maybe even some future sessions that you would like to see. I also dropped the link to the info session for tonight. So would love to see you all there. And then also going to drop the link to the application. So if you're interested in applying, feel free to do that as well. And then also wanted to share with you all the link to our next real world live project. So a great opportunity to get involved in a project. If you're looking for a place to start, this would be a great one. And then last but not least, definitely want to share with you the link for our upcoming job fair. So feel free to sign up for that as well. I've got all of those links in there. Again, we've got the feedback form, we've got the info session, we've got the application, we've got the live project, and then the last link is for our virtual job fair. I also just want to share with you that we do have an Instagram account. So feel free to follow us on social media over there at High Counselor 2022, and then obviously on LinkedIn. It's just a great way to stay engaged and interact with us, and also know about different events that we've got coming up. So that's all that I've got. I want to thank Daryl again for joining us today, and just allow him to leave us with any closing comments. Anything that you would like to share one last time?
Oh yeah, just feel free to follow me or connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to answer any questions that you have. Yeah, just find
Perfect.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just add us on LinkedIn.
yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, thank you all so much. I appreciate your time. This was great, and definitely look forward to seeing you all on the next webinar. So thank you all.